Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Ask the Expert session, taking the fear out of Atlassian Forge. Today's session will be led by Alicia Robinson, and Ariel and I will be hosting. My name is Robert Horan. I'm a solutions engineer here at Valiantys. And Ariel and Alicia, please introduce yourselves.
I think. Hi, everyone. I'm Ariel. I'm a delivery manager and cloud migrations practice lead here at Valiantys.
Hi, I'm Alicia Robinson. I'm a software engineer with about 4 years of experience here at Valiantys in our engineering team. I specialize in custom solutions. I have a background in Angular-based web development, and now I consult on custom software development, Atlassian migrations and integrations, and I serve as our bootcamp instructor for the Atlassian Forge development framework.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. Before we jump into the session, I just wanted to tell everybody a little bit about Valiantys. If you could just advance to the next slide and the next one. Perfect. Thank you. Valiantys is Atlassian's #1 global partner. We've been backed by enterprise specializations in cloud migration, enterprise strategy and planning, service management, and software development. But we've also been recognized in the last couple of years with Partner of the Year awards. And we mentioned that not to bring up a highlight reel, but this serves as validation from Atlassian for the kind of complex enterprise scale work that we deliver, um, primarily in the cloud, but also across all deployments. Next slide, please. All right. There are several ways that we can help you, and clients engage with us across all of these different ways, depending on the type of problems that they're trying to solve. Some people work with us on consulting initiatives like cloud migrations, platform assessments, governance, um, or just trying to build up from scratch. Others engage with us specifically around integrations and development work, especially when needing to extend the Atlassian platform beyond what's available out of the box. And that's often where Forge comes into the conversation. We regularly help teams use Forge to address gaps, handle edge cases, or really build purpose-built capabilities while staying aligned within the cloud architecture. But beyond that, we help support clients through managed services, hypercare, training and enablement, and assisting with licensing when it's really necessary. And so most clients start in one area and then really expand as their needs evolve. Can we go to the next? So this slide really just speaks to the broader context of how we could support organizations beyond individual tools or point solutions. We're really committed to supporting the entire Atlassian ecosystem, particularly as teams evolve and extend beyond into the cloud and more. And that commitment really shows up in how we combine strong technical depth with practical enterprise focused guidance. And in practice, this really means helping you and your organizations structure and scale your environments in ways that really may remain sustainable and are just growth oriented, especially as adoption grows and customizations increase. And we're not here to drive change just for change's sake. We really want to help you adopt and extend Atlassian in ways that don't add unnecessary complexity and just give you room to innovate. Okay. And next, please. And just to cap off, we've been in business for over 20 years, supporting Atlassian customers as their environments grow and mature. And it's a long-term perspective. I mean, over that time, that perspective really shapes how we think about scale, sustainability, and supportability. I just wanted to give you an idea of who we've supported. Those logos that you see here are really just a small sample of organizations we've worked with over that time, across a wide variety of industries and all sorts of levels of complexity as well across the globe. Thanks for giving me a couple of minutes. Alicia, it's all yours.
Yeah. Alrighty. So Thanks everyone for being here today. And here's where we're headed. So first we'll talk about why this conversation even exists. The fear around Forge is rooted in real history. Next, we'll reset the mental model for what Forge is and what it isn't, so we evaluate it fairly. Then we'll cover security, compliance, and administrative control with practical, reviewable guardrails. After that, we'll reframe the true risk. And spoiler alert, it isn't writing code. It's unclear ownership. And we'll show where Forge fits and where it doesn't. And we'll close with how to start safely, and we'll open a Q&A. So how do we frame this discussion? So this session is not a code tutorial. It's not a sales pitch. It's a governance and platform strategy discussion. We'll talk about risk boundaries, operational sustainability. We'll talk about admin control, architectural alignment, and long-term supportability. Cloud migrations often remove homegrown scripts and other things if you've entered the cloud realm. And Forge tends to get blamed for the pain it didn't cause, since that's one of the tools we use during migrations. Today, we'll separate emotion from architecture, so your decision rests on how Forge actually works. So why does this conversation exist? So in server data centers days of Atlassian products, or you might still be in those days, you might be on data center still, teams usually build powerful but fragile workflows or scripts or automations. They can have direct database queries. They could have a local cron job, a recurring task that runs something. There could be a long-lived script somewhere that nobody knows who wrote it, how it got built. You could have plugins with broad access, no control over them. So during a cloud migration, those patterns can't follow. So we need to be more strict. We need to have more security. And so during that migration, workflows break and frustration spikes. And that frustration was projected onto modern tools like Forge, because Forge is the solution to most of those things. And even though Forge wasn't the cause. So the fear is real and is earned. The target's just misidentified. So our job is to rebuild understanding so we can rebuild trust. So why does Forge feel risky? There's usually 3 drivers that explain this anxiety and this scare around Forge. So one is the historical baggage. So maybe you had a script that had broad permissions and it did a whole bunch of stuff, and then you lost the owner of it, or a plugin or an invisible script somewhere that left you with scars. It breached something and now your whole system got taken down. Or there's perceived loss of control. So when you switch from data center to cloud, you already are losing control. And so if you don't own the servers, custom code can feel like chaos. And then finally, just regulated scrutiny. So every change looks like a potential risk. So you're opening up a new gate that you have to potentially audit, and that could potentially cause problems. So these instincts are valid, but they apply to legacy patterns, not to Forge's architecture. So the fear was earned, the mapping's just wrong. Old failure modes, excessive permissions, scripts no one can see, direct database access, just unbounded execution. This is not how Forge works. Forge was designed explicitly to eliminate those risks. So evaluate Forge on its own model, not on the server error of things. So what Forge actually is. Forge is a cloud-native extension framework that runs inside Atlassian's products. So if you've ever heard of a framework called Angular, that's Google's framework for web development, or there's React, this is Atlassian's product developer framework. So Atlassian developers have created this framework for developing on their products, and they have opened it up to you to use. So it's a native extension to Atlassian. So you don't host the server anymore. You don't have to scale computational power and handle any of that or manage containers. You inherit Atlassian security. You inherit their data residency, their certifications, their monitoring, and their platform lifecycle. So they've built this all out for you. Their developers use it on a day-to-day basis. And you add targeted functionality without introducing a new system to your audit scope. So this isn't a new thing you have to evaluate and secure. It's part of the platform. So think extension inside the platform, not integration beside the platform. So what Forge is not. Forge is not an external microservice. You must secure and operate, and it's not self-hosted. It's already hosted in the cloud on your Atlassian instance. It's not a workaround or a patch, or if you've ever heard of Connect, Connect was their first version of trying to build out Forge. But with Connect, you had to host your own servers and then point that address to your Atlassian instance. So this isn't anything like that. It's built into your instance. And Forge kind of trades infinite flexibility for bounded governable risk. So that's by design and for a good reason. So here is how Forge essentially reduces the blast radius of your risk. So there's explicit permissions and scopes, and apps request only what they need. The review is concrete. There's sandbox execution. Code runs in Atlassian managed isolation. There's no direct database access. So if you lose control over your Forge app, it's not going to take down your whole entire site. Things like this. And then we start from least privilege by default in Forge. So the safe posture is the starting posture. So any permission that is needed, you have to add to it. So it starts with nothing and you slowly add what you need and you know who did what when. So taken together, customization moves from unknown unknowns to known reviewable components. So data handling. Because Forge operates within Atlassian's boundary, you align with the platform's certifications and trust and security. So you avoid, again, adding a new audit to your scope. This is in Atlassian's infrastructure. And so if you accept Atlassian and their products and all their certifications, you're also accepting Forge and what it can do. So it's in regulated environments. It's not expanding your audit scope. And that's often the biggest win when using Forge. It's not some new thing to evaluate. So administrative control. Admins retain full authority. You can inventory installed apps, inspect scopes, restrict installation workflows, and disable or remove apps instantly. So if you've ever been a site admin and you see your list of apps, it's the same thing with Forge. You'll see the Forge app listed there. You'll see who owns it, any connections it has, what version it's on, when it got installed, all of that. And then as a developer, we often get annoyed when we can't just push upgrades and get things done and new features pushed, but that's by design. Forge doesn't allow you to do that. So whoever owns the app has control of an upgrade or a downgrade or a reinstall, uninstall. This is by design. So governance, the processes you already trust. So the review, approval, change management, it fits cleanly in this model. So control stays where it belongs. So when we compare extension paths, so we have marketplace apps with the Atlassian products, and you usually get fast value with these apps. But in return, you inherit the vendor's roadmap, the vendor's pricing, the vendor's posture. So if they want to get rid of a feature, if they want to charge you an astronomical rate, or if they want to get rid of the app altogether, you have to handle that and be prepared for that. External services. So maybe an external AWS server or something like that. It can be more flexible, but they expand your audit scope again. It's another attack surface. So they create another trail that you have to follow and operate and configure. And then there's just automation sprawl. So you could have the native automations, or you can have an automation in a third-party app. They're just all over the place. And this can be cheap functionality early, but it can be brittle later because you don't know who owns what where. And they're largely invisible. Nobody can know where everything is. So all options involve developers at some point. You need a developer so they can tell you what's the good options in front of you, what's happening natively, or what can be done with a third party, or what can be customized. So Forge makes that involvement explicit. It makes it governable while reducing infrastructure sprawl. So we've been reframing the risk. So we're not chasing zero risk. I don't even know if that's possible, but we're designing for bounded, explainable risk. So Forge constrains what code can do. It keeps it inside a managed runtime, exposes it to admin visibility. It gives governance. Teams review anything that goes on. It has explicit permissions. So this is what we are after. So a realistic use case, so where Forge would shine. So anything where you need to governance an app and have a strict workflow. So Forge adopts that model perfectly. There's always checks among all of the workflows. There's naming standards. Again, this is built by Atlassian engineers. And so they know what they're doing. They've built these products. These products have been used and have lasted. So it has a very good governance model. It has cross-product logic. So you can coordinate actions among all the products. So across Jira, Confluence, Assets, Compass, any of the Atlassian products. And then, of course, you're just replacing all of the brittle legacy patterns and scripts. So anything that was invisible before now becomes visible, now becomes governed, and it's a supported app. Another one would be just edge case automation. So any native things that aren't there that you want to do that's very unique to your organization that a marketplace app won't cover. And then obviously, because you're developing it, it's probably going to be way cheaper than what the marketplace app is going to charge you. Targeted workflow gaps. So if you have a complicated workflow and Atlassian doesn't want to prioritize this feature and you're just waiting and waiting, Forge can be there to add this small addition and it can help you. So why do these use cases work? So successful Forge apps share probably 3 traits. So they have the narrow scope, they have the clear ownership, and a low rate of change. So the narrow keeps reviews simple, ownership prevents drift, and the low change keeps maintenance predictable. And the rule of thumb is essentially if you can describe your problem in about a paragraph, Forge can probably solve it. So let's be explicit here. Forge does require a developer, and that is not a feature. It's not, and that's a feature, it's not a flaw. It's creating visibility and accountability. So you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. There's a difference from legacy customization and what you don't own. So you don't own servers or any of the patching involved or the runtime. The build effort is real. So you will have to build an initial app, but the actual operation of that and the maintaining of that is very small. So what does developer ownership really mean? In practice, it's just a short discovery, a short conversation. So what are your actual needs? What can be done natively versus where can Forge step in? And then you just have a focused development build that has focused scope permissions. You have a reviewable release. And so everybody is aware of when first releases and everybody knows who owns what. Then after go live, changes tend to be minor. So there might be a few logic tweaks or a few new features that you might review, but nothing major. And then if you compare that to a hot fix or a patch lifecycle in the old world of things in the DC era. So this is intentionally calmer. There's no firefighting constantly. So the real risk. The risk to eliminate isn't some code exists, it's no one owns it. So orphaned apps drift. No one knows where they are, who built them. There's missed reviews. They just silently become liabilities. And so things just slowly stop working and you don't really understand why. So you need just a simple operating agreement, who approves changes, who monitors scopes, who retires the app, or who owns it. And as those processes change, you document it, and then that removes most of the risk. So what's the ownership model? So there's about 2 different models, and then the third model is kind of a combination of the first 2. So there's usually an internal team where you have possibly an internal development team that understands somewhat these tools and how to navigate the space. And they usually help with the development process or own it at the end. And then 2, there's partner supported. So you kind of reach out to a third party and they build the initial app and then they do maintenance. And then the third is just a hybrid. So you guys constantly are working together to build out this product. And then maybe there's a final handoff. So you choose what you need based on your capacity and what's critical. And then you make the ownership explicit. So supportability and longevity. Forge reduces lifecycle surprises. So again, you have everything managed, everything governed. There's versioned APIs and there's communicated change. So they do have a change log. When they have breaking changes, they discuss that and they communicate that with everyone. Things are not changed constantly. They have longevity with their APIs and their code. Again, this is the same framework that internal developers use across the products. If it was constantly changing, they wouldn't have a good product. So it's pretty stable. You still plan for updates. So if they do release a change log that has a breaking change or anything, you still plan for that. You still update what you can, but you're not constantly firefighting. And you treat the app as a small product. So you don't get it too large and you have a predictable backlog. You're not constantly maintaining something. When is Forge not the right choice? So avoid Forge when you need heavy computation or your app becomes its own product. So it no longer needs Atlassian integration, it becomes its own standalone thing. So Forge is built on Atlassian products and for Atlassian products. So it should integrate with Atlassian and help the product itself. So if it becomes too large, too much computation, their servers aren't meant to handle that, then you might need to introduce a third party or go with another option. But usually these apps, they just want to fine tune things within the product that Atlassian isn't prioritizing. So just know the limits and then choose the right architecture for your purpose. And how do we start safely? So you start small. So starts with an idea, starts with probably a 2-week pilot of getting that idea out, building just a small app, seeing if it is feasible, then just narrow the scope, narrow the permissions, document everything. And then because it's code and it's in a code base, you can use Git history. You know who the owner is, you know who pushed code when. And then you just put the app through a standard review lifecycle. So treat it like any other change request. So you measure outcome, you measure effort, then you do just more small features on top of it. And then after about 2 cycles of that, you have a repeated pattern. So you have a governance comfort and a working template your developers and your product owners can have. So again, Forge lets you extend Atlassian Cloud without expanding risk. So you get automation, you get the guardrails, you get the workflow while staying inside of the Atlassian security boundary. You're not introducing new audit scopes, any things like that, or new things teams have to support. It's a responsible extension. And now we're on to the Q&A. So we can get into your guys' questions on any of the topics we've discussed.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alicia. This was unbelievably excellent. Thank you. And so much of that ties into conversations, both Ariel and I have had in migrations, especially around the fear of going outside of the ecosystem. A lot of times people look at Forge as being separate from Atlassian rather than being tied in. And and this is the conversation I have with them frequently that no, this is part of the ecosystem. It's custom in the sense that nobody's built this solution for you, but it's not so far removed that you're using a completely different tool set.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I think that would really help, I think people sometimes don't, they just see Forge and they say, okay, um, what sort of skills would people need to have just to get started if they've never approached this before?
So if you're coming from a developer perspective, it's the common languages. So it's HTML, it's CSS, it's JavaScript. So it's a web framework within Atlassian's product. So these languages have been around for a long, long time. So if you're actually developing on the product, I would say that those languages, and pretty much anybody who's been around for a while has some idea of those languages and how complex they are. And then, yeah.
Okay, we actually have a list of questions from the attendees. Let me scroll up to the first one just a second. Some of these might have been sent on the beginning of the presentation, so it's gonna sound like a recap, I believe. Okay, so found first one is Forge really inside the Atlassian ecosystem, or it's just hosted there?
So Forge is a development framework. So it's like a library of tools that you can use and that the Atlassian developers have built. So it is inside of their infrastructure. It's not like an add-on. It's not a third-party package that you install and slap on. It's part of their infrastructure and it works seamlessly with their infrastructure. As soon as you start developing, installing, deploying this app, you can see that. It goes on the app. You can see it like any other app that you install in the marketplace. It works perfectly in their infrastructure. They have documentation out there. We could probably link that out somewhere. And they work on it every single day to try and inform you to use it better. But yes, it is built on their infrastructure in their platform.
Okay. And next one is, how is Forge different from a marketplace app from a security standpoint?
So marketplace apps have free reign to a certain extent on what they can do. They don't have to use Forge. Some marketplace apps do use Forge to develop and deploy and all of that. And if those are built with Forge, then of course they're going to have the same security. And they usually have some sort of certification there that says that it's a Forge app, but it's just on the marketplace for someone to buy. And then the other ones, they might be on a third-party server. So they could be on AWS, they could be on any sort of third-party server. And so you'd get that security and that infrastructure. It wouldn't be on Atlassian's.
And can Forge apps access or store sensitive data?
So Forge has a lot of solutions for storage. So they have what's called an SQL database that you can use. And so if you've ever familiar with SQL, it's been around for a while. So Postgres, anything like that, they have that. Then for just smaller storage, they have what's called key value storage. And it's exactly how it sounds. There's a key and there's a value, and they accept all sorts of values. And then they have sort of like a small table system. So it's kind of a downgrade from SQL. It's called their entity store. So it can do a little bit of what SQL can do, just not as advanced. But these storage systems can be quite large, like they scale. These systems are used for their internal products behind the scenes too. So they are meant to scale and hold secure data.
And would sorry. Actually,
go
just
ahead.
a follow-up question, just because I've been asked this in the past. How easy would it be for someone to maybe use an API or some other connection to extract or use it for, use data for reporting?
So you're talking about using an API to secure the data and communicate between it?
Well, for Forge for data that's stored in Forge. You said, and maybe I misunderstood the answer, and I apologize.
So a third-party API talking to your Forge app to get the storage.
Yeah, to access any data that may be outside of the Jira or Confluence database.
So any third-party connections, you have to have what's called OAuth 2. And so there's an authentication protocol there where the keys are handed off to basically secure that connection and know that it's a trusted third party. And so that's your security there.
Thank you. Sorry, Aaron, you're about to read off another question.
Yep, no problem. Okay, so someone's asking if we think Forge can somehow help replace apps as script runner.
Yes. So Script Runner is a third-party app that allows you to write your custom scripts, usually in JavaScript, to do anything that the native product can do. and ScriptRunner does it a little bit differently. So I think they have a third-party database that handles a lot of the heavy lifting. They haven't connected to the Forge storage capabilities, and so it's not completely a Forge app. They're using third-party data. And then any of the features I've seen in ScriptRunner, you could do in Forge. So if you wanted to create a complete clone of ScriptRunner in Forge, you could. It would be a lot of work, but essentially, from my experience, you could.
Another one is what if Atlassian changes or deprecates Forge APIs?
So Forge APIs are not really Forge specific. They are the APIs that Jira has, Confluence has. So these are APIs that have already been established. They already have versioning. They already have longevity. So you're just tapping into those. And Forge allows you to connect to them securely and connect to them when you want to, how you want to.
So you're just leveraging what's already in place, not having to learn anything new.
Yep.
Yeah, that's extremely helpful for especially for people who are rebuilding a lot of API connections from DC to cloud and then looking at Forge to replace some of the functionality that's just not available in cloud or it operates a little differently.
Yep.
Oh, this is a good one. Is Forge appropriated for regulated or enterprise environments?
So we build Forge apps for enterprises all the time. So some of the clients that you saw in that earlier slide, Mercedes, we've built Forge apps for. We've done tons of enterprise development with these Forge apps. So essentially, these companies just want some integrations or some tweaks that the native product doesn't have. So it doesn't get too large, but it does enough for their needs.
And, I think this is the last one. How is Forge priced?
So Forge is usually priced by the same kind of pricing model as their automation model. So anytime you reach a certain limit, I believe their documentation has it, but you start out with a generous amount of storage that you can use, a generous amount of invocations that you can use. So pinging their API, any of these functionalities, long running processes, you start with a generous amount for free. Then they have a pricing model beside it. And I believe they also have a calculator that you could use that helps for those pricing. And so you just plug in how many users you have, how you expect it to work, how many calls are you going to do, how much data do you need to store, things like that. And then it'll calculate all those pricings for you. But usually on a grand scale, it's less than you might think.
And this is great because that generous amount that they give you for free really allows people to get started building POCs and doing other sorts of work completely risk-free then without financially risk-free um without having to worry about a trial period or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you can start a development instance anytime you want across Atlassian products and then start Forge app development. That's what we do in our course, and we walk through how to do that. And then you're told in advance to a certain extent when you're going to get charged.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
And no more questions on the chat.
All right. Well then, everyone, thank you so much for attending today's session. Um, as Alicia mentioned, we were going to have more Forge boot camps coming up. I believe the next one is on April 6th. Um, yeah, just a little over a month and a half away. So if you're interested, please feel free to sign up. We can get you a nice discount for the course as well if you'd like. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, team.